This looks a little funny, and that's because I switched to short strand. It's basically the jelly stuff because it's a fiberglass product. Essentially, it's a fiberglass product, but it actually has like the mat in it. That's little pieces of it that's stuffed in it. We used to call it kitty hair because when you pull it apart, it looks like kitty hair. The Bondo brand stuff's the only brand I've ever used. It works great. Like, they really have their stuff down. I love using it. And they say you can stack it up to a quarter of an or a half an inch. That's a lot. That's nowhere near. This isn't even at a quarter inch. And a couple places. Here, here, and one right here. That's it. They're stacked just below a quarter of an inch. And that's just little bitty spots. I can't get back up in here to fix my welding screw-ups. I mean, it was my fault. When I tack welded that in, I didn't see the metal kind of do a bow shrink back in 2 spots. Totally my fault, but it's not that far back. So, instead of having to cut it, bring it back forward, this is the next step. The jelly I used on this thin body line here, which it's a stupid tiny body line, no big deal. I used the jelly in the bigger one because, again, that's not even a quarter of an inch, nowhere near there. It'll stick perfectly fine if you prep it properly, which is I-40 grit, not 80, I-40. I give it something really good to bite to. 80 grit will work too. And then I put a crap ton on there, which is what you're seeing here. I do a light sand when it's about 3/4 of the way dry, just to knock any high spots off. Make sure that I haven't really warped the panel, like done too much to it. This is way too thick right here. No big deal. I'll take the DA and I'll knock it all down. 95% of everything put on this panel will wind up in the floor or on my shirt. Not my hair, because I remembered to wear a hat this time. this episode, we're going to end up calling it quits. And let me give you a couple little updates and a couple little tips if you're doing any of this or you're following along and learning and stuff. This is something that I want to kind of explain a little bit more, and explain everything I do. So if, say, you run across something that you're trying to learn from, I actually give you some verbal cues. You're not just watching me and you can't figure out why I'm doing something. I don't know how much of the layering I'm going to show you, but with Bondo glass or kitty hair or short strand filler, whatever you want to call it, it can be filled, depending on the brand, like 1/2 inch thick. Now that's filling. Like this can even fill rust holes even. Like I've seen some really crazy stuff filled with this and it lasts. That's why I don't feel bad about doing it this way. But like the little body lines right here and down here where the side little mold was, you basically want to rough sand that really good. I use a 40 grit on the whole door. I guess the 40 grit's just paranoia that something's going to be left behind. And I make sure that the metal's all nice and shiny, obviously, like I've done on the other panels. But then I put a real thin layer of the Bondo glass, short strand, whatever you want to call it. Put a light layer, let it cure, sand it. Put a light layer, let it cure, sand it. Over and over and over and over till I stack it where I want it. Now, it's not even being stacked to 1/4 inch anywhere on this. Maybe it'd be coming close in a couple spots down here and maybe the 2 spots up there. But that's still half of what it's capable of doing. It's still good. And it has a solid back to it. So it's not like there's a hole and I'm filling the hole with this stuff. It's got a good strong back to it. You just need to slowly build it, because if you slap it all on there, while you're sanding the surface, the inside's not cured yet. B, well, unless you wait forever, but B, you can get pockets in it. You can get where, say, this is overly exaggerated, but you know, you have the side molding. You can get these gaps up in here that don't have anything to bond to. And that's a lot of strength in there that you want. So like at this point, I could whack this door with a hammer and I doubt it's going to come off. It'll probably crack in some places because it's so dense and hard. But it's not like I'm going to be driving down the road, hit a bump, and it's going to fall off. No. It's not going to be like on the other side of the car where somebody did not sand the panel and put that thick a Bondo on it. And then it fell off. A chunk fell off. Same with up here. You know, there was a chunk, not even that thick, but they didn't prepare the panel properly. They didn't get rid of the surface rust. It looked like they just bonded over the top of surface rust and expected it to stay. Obviously it's not going to. Same with this. Make sure it's clean. Make sure it's sanded. Every single layer. If you have a dusty layer and you put the stuff over it, that's a failure point. It's like with anything, with paint, primer, bodywork, vinyl, stickers. You know, make sure it's clean. Make sure the surface has something to bond to. Whatever the product wants it to bond to, like whatever the finish. Paint, you're looking at what, 400 grit for base or whatever. Or for the prime layer, whatever you need to use, it doesn't matter. You just need to make sure it's going to adhere good, which is what we do here. That's why it takes so flippin' long, is because it's put a little bit on, sand it off, put a little bit on, sand it off, put a little bit on, sand it off, keep doing it over and over. And again, this stuff is really dense. It takes forever to sand off. It's not like lightweight filler where you just block it off real quick and it's done, and you keep adding the layers until you get everything perfect. And you waste about 95% of it. Like, look at the quarter. I put a whole bunch of layers. You can see so many different colors down the quarter where it's different colored layers, because obviously I get different colors because I put too much hardener in one and then not quite enough in the other. I mean, it's got a good hardness range, or cream hardener range, that you can put in there. But it works out real well. Fender flare's coming out good. I'm still going to add the short strand to it, but before that, there's probably some work I want to do on the body line that I've created, the Fender actual straight line. I need to keep sanding on that, and then you can tell where my gaps were, where I sliced it to widen it. I'm going to have to go in there and push fiberglass down in it, because I don't want like anything on the outside or anything that's going to hit rocks or any of that built out of the kitty hair. I don't. It'll probably last just as good as glass because none of that's going to be thick enough. But it's just one of those things. It's fiberglass. I'm adding fiberglass. It's easier just to add fiberglass to fiberglass. There's no point. So I'm going to just keep adding fiberglass till I get that really good. But the shape of it's there. We have the shape. It's perfect. Obviously, that will be worked separately because I still need to add the back layer and everything else. But to add the back layer, quarter panel has to be perfect. We did get the body roll down at the bottom because the fender's designed to be kind of straight and it needs to roll in slightly. I did get that in there just fine. I was hoping I did. I still need to drill the hole for that. Right now I'm just using self-tappers. Obviously the body kit's not going to be held on by self-tappers. That's tacky. I don't know what hardware yet. I've been looking at a couple companies, but we wanted to build this as kind of like a DIY budget build. Budget as in, it's still a budget vehicle, even though some of the stuff is out of the range of some people, but it's not really out of range. Like, we're saving for this. It takes us time to save. So while we're sitting here doing this work, we're saving money because we're not spending it on much of anything but the filler. And it's a little expensive. It's like 14 bucks a little quart of it. But it goes a decently long way. Like, I probably used 14 bucks worth on these two panels and that door. It's probably a whole can on this, that, and that door. And literally there's a pile like this on the floor of just dust. But if I was a little bit better at it, maybe. But I didn't know. I don't know. I could have done a better job of not wasting so much. I have wasted a lot. But I just want to make sure it's there and it's packed in right. You know, it's a paranoia thing, I guess, when I don't need to be paranoid over it. The product does what it says it does. It actually works better than it says it does. I've seen it fix stuff way worse, way thicker, you know, and work and last and stay. What you do want to watch out for is just overly doing it. Pay attention how deep you're making it, because you can't see how thick it is once you start building it. So do measurements if you have to. If you're like, oh, well, this piece, you know, is approaching on 1/2 inch thick. Okay, I had that issue down here. I'm not going to pack it a 1/2 inch thick. I'm not going to pack it over a 1/4 inch thick unless I just accidentally do it. Hammer and dolly. You guys saw me hammer and dolly it at the end because I wasn't really measuring. I was using my eye to do it. But you know what a 1/2 inch thick is. Don't be a guy. Measure it properly. I guess be a guy. Never mind. Overlinked in it. It's late. We're almost done with this. Throughout my hours here and there before the next episode, I will knock this and have it ready for filler. So, thank you all for watching. Don't forget the giveaway. It's a weekend. I ain't got shit to update you on that.
Well, folks, it's time to kick it old school.